Losing 20 kilos isn't the hard part. I know that sounds insane, but stay with me for a second. The hard part is keeping it off, because I have watched women lose 20 kilos and gain it all back multiple times. And the reason this keeps coming back is not willpower, it's not discipline, and it's not motivation. And it's one very specific thing that almost no program addresses. I'm going to show you exactly what that is today, and I'm going to walk you through the exact steps I use. And now I teach women inside Shape to lose the weight and make a forever change. If you have come to this video, there is a good chance you have lost the weight before. Maybe even multiple times, maybe a significant amount, and maybe it came back. I want you to know something before we get into this. This is not a character flaw. This is not proof that you cannot do it. This is proof that you were given the wrong tools. More specifically, that you were given the weight loss tools and not the staying there tools. And those are two completely different things. I spent so many years of my life losing and regaining the same weight. I would do a program, I would get results, I would finish the program, and then over the following months, slowly it would creep back on again. And every time it did, I took that as evidence that something was just wrong with me, that I could not sustain it, that I was just always going to be someone who struggled with this. It took me a really long time to understand that the gap was not my willpower, it was that I'd never been taught how to do this properly. And now I get to coach hundreds of women through this, and I see the same pattern every single time. Lose the weight, but you do not learn how to eat once the plan is done. And then you gain it all back and feel like a failure. Then we restart again on Monday. Today, I'm going to give you the 5 things you need to do to lose 20 kilos and genuinely keep it off. Not the plan you follow for 12 weeks, the actual framework that makes this permanent. Step 1, understanding why you have not kept it off before. And this is probably not what you think. Step 2, set up your nutrition in a way that actually works with your life. Step 3, build in a training approach that protects your results. Step 4, fix the behaviors that have been quietly undoing everything. And step 5, the one most programs never teach you, is how to actually transition out of a deficit without gaining it back. Step 1, understanding why it has always come back. Before you can lose 20 kilos and keep it off, you need to understand why you have not kept it off before. Because if you do not understand that, you will repeat the same cycle again, just with a different program name. Most women come to me believing that the reason the weight comes back was because they stopped trying. They lost focus, they got busy, they fell off the wagon, and that story makes them feel like the problem is them. And it's not. I also believed this for years. Every time I gained the weight back, I would go over what I had done wrong, what I had eaten, where I had slipped up, maybe when I stopped going to the gym, and the story I told myself was, I cannot stay consistent, I'm all or nothing person, I always self-sabotage, and I believed it. But what I did not see was the actual mechanism. The weight came back because the programs I followed were built to get me results, not teach me how my body actually worked. So, the moment the structure ended, I had no tools. I just had my old habits and a new layer of shame. Here is what actually happens when you lose weight through restriction and then stop. You cut calories significantly, your body adapts, your metabolism downregulates, it gets more efficient at running on less energy. This is a survival mechanism and it's completely normal, but it does mean that the calorie intake that created your deficit at the start of the program is no longer creating the deficit by the end of it. Your body has adjusted over time. Most programs do not address this at all. They run you through an 8 or a 12 week of restriction, get you results, and then you're left by yourself with no guidance on what to eat now that the plan is over. You go back to normal eating, the way you always ate, and now your slower metabolism will store the excess fat, sometimes faster than it came off. I've had women come to me who have lost 15, 20 kilos on a program, get real results, and then gain every single kilo back within 6 months of finishing. Not because they stopped caring, because they went back to eating the way they always had, with no understanding of what had changed in their bodies. The program gave them results, it did not give them the education. Understanding this is the first step, because once you see it clearly, you can stop blaming yourself and start asking the right questions. What do I need to do to make sure this time is different? Which brings me to step 2. Because the answer to that question starts with getting your nutrition set up in a way that actually teaches you something rather than just giving you rules to follow. You need to set up your nutrition to lose fat, not just weight. When most people think about losing 20 kilos, they think about eating less. Less food, less calories, less of everything they enjoy. And they brace for the suffering. And that bracing is part of why it does not stick, because you cannot sustain something you dread. And trust me, I have done the suffering version. I've done the 1200 calories. I've done the no carbs, low fat, having the shake diets, and I lost weight. But I was miserable and I was hungry constantly. I was obsessing over food every waking hour, and the moment the pressure lifted, the moment a birthday happened or a hard week or just a Thursday when I'd had enough, it was over. And then I just felt worse because I had failed again. The problem was not my commitment. The problem was the approach was not designed to be livable. And anything that is not livable, eventually it's going to end. Losing fat while preserving your muscle requires getting 3 things right inside your nutrition. First is your calories. You need to be in a calorie deficit, consuming less energy than your body burns. Not a severe one, not 1200 calories unless your body genuinely requires that little. A moderate, sustainable deficit of around 300 to 500 calories below your maintenance intake is where most women get the best results. Enough to create consistent progress, not so much that your body fights back hard but your energy and your muscle mass suffer. Second is protein. This is the one most women are massively undereating. When you're in a calorie deficit, your body can source energy from either fat or muscle. Getting adequate protein, roughly 1.8 to 2.2 grams per kilo of your goal body weight per day, tells your body to protect muscle and burn the fat instead. Without enough protein, you will lose weight, but you will lose muscle with it. And we don't want that, which means a slower metabolism, a body shape you are not going to be happy with, even when the number on the scales go down. Third, we need consistency over perfection. A nutrition approach that is 85% on track every day will outperform a perfect approach you can only sustain for 3 weeks. The goal is something you can actually do with your family, in your kitchen, at restaurants, on weekends, when life is hard, not something that requires ideal conditions to function. And this was the shift that changed everything for me. When I stopped trying to eat perfectly and started building an approach I could actually maintain, one that included real food, meals with my family, the occasional beverage with friends, the results came and they stayed. Not because I suddenly had more discipline, because the approach was finally designed to work inside my actual life. I had a client in her mid-50s with 2 adult kids, full-time work, and had done every major program going. She told me in our first call, "I eat really well, but I just cannot lose weight." Once we tracked her food accurately for 1 week, she was eating around an extra 600 calories per day than she thought. And none of this was from junk food. From healthy foods she was underestimating. Avocado, olive oil, nuts, generous portions of whole grains. We adjusted the amount, got her protein up, and within 3 months, she had lost 11 kilos. All without starving, without cutting everything out completely. Just accuracy and protein. But nutrition on its own will only take you so far when it comes to both the speed of your results and critically keeping them. This next step is what protects everything you build. Step 3, train in a way that protects your results. When women decide they want to lose weight, the first thing most of them do is increase their cardio, do more classes, more working, more burning calories. I understand the logic. More exercise equals more calories burned equals faster results. But here is the problem with cardio-only approaches. Cardio burns calories during the session. Strength training changes your body composition. It builds and preserves muscle, which burns more calories at rest when you're sitting still and doing nothing. And I used to be that person. For years, I lived at the gym doing cardio morning and afternoon and wondering why my body was not changing the way I wanted. I was getting fitter, my cardiovascular health was improving, but I was not building anything. I was not getting any stronger, I wasn't getting any more tone, I was just getting softer and more frustrated. It was only when I started resistance training consistently that my body actually started to look the way I wanted it to. After around 35 to 40, women start losing muscle mass naturally, and you can end up with something called osteoporosis. Muscle is also metabolically active tissue. More muscle means a higher resting metabolic rate, meaning your body burns more calories at rest. This is why building and preserving muscle mass is one of the most important things you can do for keeping the weight off long term. It literally raises the number of calories your body needs to function, which gives you more room to eat without gaining. For most women, I recommend 3 sessions of resistance training per week as a foundation. You do not need to spend hours in the gym, 30 to 40 minutes, focused on compound movements like squats, deadlifts, rows, pressing is enough to build real strength and change your body composition. And don't get me wrong, cardio has its place. It supports heart health, mood, and recovery, and it can accelerate fat loss when used strategically, but it should not be the primary tool. Resistance training is the primary tool, cardio is the support. I have a client in her late 40s who came to me convinced that she needed to do more cardio to break through her plateau. She was already doing 4 or 5 sessions a week and not moving. We scaled the cardio back and added 3 strength sessions and increased her protein. She dropped 8 kilos in 10 weeks. And more importantly, she said for the first time in years, she actually liked what she could see happening to her body in the mirror. Not just the number, but the actual shape. And yet, I have watched women nail their nutrition and their training and still not keep the weight off. Because this next step is the one that almost always gets skipped, and it is the one that determines everything. Step 4, we need to fix your behaviors that have been quietly undoing everything for years. I want to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with yourself, because this is the step most people skip, and it is the step that most determines whether the weight stays off. Do you eat in ways that have nothing to do with hunger? Do you eat when you're stressed or bored, exhausted or lonely? Do you find yourself in the kitchen at 9 p.m. not because you're hungry, but because the day has been relentless and food is the one thing that feels like comfort? Do you have a pattern of doing really well and then a hard week happens and everything comes undone? I used to live this, and I lived it for a long time, and so have a lot of our clients. There were years when my relationship with food had almost nothing to do with nutrition and almost everything to do with how I was feeling. Food was how I unwound, food was the reward at the end of the day, food was how I coped with things when I felt out of control. I could know every macro and hit every calorie target, do all of the right things, and then one hard week and it was gone. Because the behavior was still there underneath everything. And most programs never touch this because behaviors are harder to address than just a meal plan. It is easier to hand someone a list of what to eat than sit with them in the harder conversations about why they eat when they are not hungry. But if you do not address the behaviors, the strategy will only ever work until the next hard week. And hard weeks are not the exception. They are a part of life. Emotional eating, stress eating, habit eating, these are not character flaws. They are learned responses. Your brain has been trained over many years to associate certain feelings with food. That association does not disappear because you started tracking your calories. It sits underneath the strategy and it waits. Addressing it requires 3 things: identifying your triggers, what situations, emotions, or time of day consistently lead you to eating that is not driven by hunger. 2, building alternative responses. What you can do instead that meets that actual need. If the need is to decompress, what decompresses you that is not food? If the need is comfort, where can you find that? 3rd, building self-awareness without shame. Being able to notice the behavior without the shame spiraling that usually follows it. Because the shame spiraling is what makes it worse, not better. This is the work that makes the difference between losing 20 kilos and finally keeping it off, or losing 20 kilos and finding them again 18 months later. One of my clients described it this way. She said she would do perfectly all week, and then Friday night would come around and something would shift in her brain and the whole weekend would unravel. We worked through what Friday nights actually meant: the exhaustion, the end of the week output, the feeling of just needing to let go. The food was never about the food. Once she understood that and had other ways to let go on a Friday night, the patterns changed. Not immediately, but consistently over time we worked on it. And when all of this is in place, the nutrition, the training, the behavior work, there is one final step that most programs completely ignore. And it is the step that determines whether everything you have built actually lasts. Step 5, learning how to stop dieting without gaining it all back. This is the step nobody talks about, the step that most programs do not include. And it is the reason that even when everything else goes right, the weight still creeps back on. What happens when the plan ends? Because the plan always does end. The 12 weeks finishes, the program concludes, and you are left standing there with your results, having no idea how to eat now that you're not following a structure. So you go back to eating the way you used to eat. In a body that is adapted to a deficit, eating maintenance or above for the first time in months, you will regain the weight quickly. I did this cycle so many times. I would finish a program, feel incredible, think I'd finally cracked it, and then over the next 3 to 6 months, quietly the weight would return. And I had no framework of why or how to stop it. I just watched it happen every time. And the solution is something called a reverse diet, and this is what we do inside our program. A reverse diet is a controlled, gradual increase of your calorie intake after a diet phase. Instead of going from a deficit to normal eating in one step, which shocks your body and triggers rapid fat loss, you add calories back slowly over a period of weeks, giving your metabolism times to upregulate and adapt. Done correctly, a reverse diet allows you to reach your maintenance calorie intake, the amount of food you eat without gaining weight, while keeping your results. It also rebuilds your metabolic rate after the suppression that comes along with dieting, which means your maintenance intake ends up being higher than it was before if you do this properly. More food keeping the results you've worked so hard to get, and that is the goal. This is a 4-phase process inside of our program. Phase 1, where we build your foundations, we work on getting adequate protein and strength training and make this fit your lifestyle. Phase 2, we accelerate on the fat loss phase. And then phase 3, we start adding your calories back up while maintaining your goal. And then phase 4 is maintenance phase, where you learn to stay there without tracking forever, without restriction, without the constant mental load of a diet. This is just on autopilot for you now. By the time our clients complete the full program, they understand how their body works. They know how to eat on holidays, they know how to handle a social event without derailing, they know how to have a bad week and get back on track without it becoming a whole month of a write-off. They're not following a plan anymore. This is just their everyday living. I had a client, she completed our program, she lost 38 kilos, and I still see her 3 years on in our gym maintaining her goal weight because, like I said, this is just normal now. No restrictions, no regaining the weight back. It's just everyday life. And that is a goal we want you to achieve. So that's all the 5 stages. Understanding why it came back, get your nutrition right for fat loss, not just weight loss, train in a way that protects your body composition, fix the behaviors that keep pulling you back to old ways, and learn how to come out of a deficit so you maintain these results for life. And if you do steps 1 through to 5 without the behavior work, in step 4, you might lose the weight and it might come back too, because the next hard season of life will come, and it always does. And if food is still what you reach for when that happens, the strategy will not work. The women who lose the 20 kilos and keep it off aren't more disciplined. They are not more motivated than you. They have just done all 5 phases working together, and they have the support when the hard weeks come, so they don't have to figure it out alone. And this is exactly what we do inside Shape. Our clients have 24/7 one-on-one support. So when Friday comes, someone is there to help you get through the weekend so you don't have to start again Monday. They get the full 4 phases in our program, including the reverse diet and the maintenance phase, so they know how to eat when the plan is over. They get the behavior work built into the support because we are not just tracking macros together. We are working through why food has been what it has been and finally building something different. This is designed to be the last time you ever have to restart again on Monday. If that sounds like what you've been looking for, you are done with the cycle and you're ready to actually understand what you are doing and why, click the link below for coaching. I'll ask a couple of questions and I'll see how we can help. And if you want to go a little bit deeper, watch this mindset video here.